Hello, welcome to Healing with podcast. I am Marissa McDevitt, your host, mindset coach, mentor, and founder of Healing Center. Tired of all the BS? So was I. This podcast is my raw, unfiltered take on life, sharing my personal experiences, lessons, and healing practices that helped me break free from the cycles that no longer serve me. I'm just an average woman who decided to stop settling and start speaking up. Here we dive deep into the messy, beautiful, and sometimes painful realities of life, business, and relationships. No fluff, no judgment, just real talk, real growth, and real transformation. This is a safe space for anyone, women, men, and all the beauties in between. So who's ready to raise their standards, heal, and step into their power? Let's learn, grow, and evolve together. Now tune in and let's talk about it. Episode 10, From Trauma to Transformation, a Father-Daughter Journey Through Music and Connection. From childhood trauma, addiction, and incarceration to psychedelic breakthroughs, underground raves, and our first hug. This episode dives into how music and love can truly transform my life. I open up about the first time my dad kissed my cheek, told me he was proud of me, and how the PLUR culture of music festivals helped him heal years of pain, racism, and emotional distance. I talk about the power of hugs and human connection, how music and psychedelics saved us, our first electric forest in the moment our hearts open, breaking generational trauma and rising together, healing the masculine through love, and why I believe the 5th D frequency is rooted in the heart. This episode is a tribute to the love that heals, the music that moves us, and the power of showing up even when the past has tried to break us. Let's drop into this heart space together. I watched a documentary last week called Love Over Money by John Robbins, which is what inspired me to create this episode and talk about my father's and mine's experience together. So in this documentary, for those who don't know, Love Over Money by John Robbins, he is the son of the Baskin-Robbins guy. And John Robbins explains in his documentary how he turned down the billion-dollar business. And in that documentary, he explains the first time that he gave his father a hug and the way that his dad reacted. And that connected with me so hard because that was exactly the way that my father reacted when I took my dad to his first rave. Right? So a little overview on the documentary. The Baskin-Robbins guys, company blew up, right? 31 flavors. And of course, he was going to pass down the business to his son, John Robbins. Well, when John Robbins was a young child, he didn't get any emotional support or emotional love or anything. They're very rich, very fast. His dad was a workaholic. His mom was enjoying the luxury. So they didn't understand to love and nurture your children. They had maids. They had all the things that you could think of rich people had. So he had everything materialistic, right? He had a ginormous room. He was always fed. He got ice cream for breakfast, but he never had that emotional support ever. To whereas his father would specifically go out of town when his mom was pregnant with a newborn because his dad was he liked to control outcomes. And he even said, I can't be around because if something goes down and I can't control it, he won't be able to handle it. So the difference is his dad was a workaholic and John Robbins grew up very intuitive and connected strongly with animals. Very spiritual. And his dad was the complete opposite, very work-oriented, materialistic, 3D living, etc. So as John Robbins grows older, he starts working in the factories, working in the ice cream shops, doing all the things because he's going to get handed the business. But he didn't want to just be that rich kid. He wanted to actually put in the work to be able to have people respect him when he received the business. He didn't want to just be called the rich kid. Well, as John Robbins started growing up, he realized that what Baskin Robbins was promoting wasn't really what was happening behind the scenes. For example, they had these beautiful cows from Wisconsin all over their Baskin Robbins shop, but really where they sourced their milk from was California into a big corporation milking facility where the cows never seen sunlight, stayed under this, this ginormous barn with never getting cleaned manure up to their legs. They get shoved into a system where a machine milks them and they get fed corn and they're shot up with all these antibiotics. And John Robbins was really excited to go see the cows for the first time that gave the milk for the ice cream. And when he approached the cow, it shivered away like it was going to get hit. And John did not understand, what are they doing to these cows where it is so terrible? So when they left, he asked his dad, does this bother you that these cows they don't look like the ones on the photos that we have in the ice cream shops? And his dad said, don't worry about it. Pretty much stating don't ever talk about this again. Don't worry about it. Doesn't matter. But to John, it really mattered. It really mattered. So fast forward, he starts reading books secretly because he can't be caught reading spiritual books or inspirational books. He was very into Martin Luther King Jr. and very wanting to help society, where his dad was up with the politicians, very Ku Klux Klan style, and just the complete opposite of John Robbins. And what happened was eventually John Robbins goes off to college, meets a woman, his wife, ends up being together. His dad calls him and says, hey, I'm going to offer you the business. And John says, I want nothing to do with the business. I don't want anything to do with the way that you treat the animals, the chemicals you're putting in the ice cream that's making people sick, because John Robbins was he got into health and nutrition and realizing that all this sugar is causing diabetes, which caused his uncle to die because all they did was eat ice cream every single day. So his dad got really upset and said, I'm going to forget you even said that. A month later, they go out to lunch. He presents the offer to John Robbins again. I'm going to pass the business down to you. John Robbins looks at him and says, Dad, you need to sell the business. His dad did not talk to him for 2 years. His dad was very upset, pretty much outcasted him. And John Robbins signed off all rights to the money. He didn't want any money from his father. He didn't want any money from Baskin Robbins. He wanted to do things on his own. He wanted to figure it out on his own. He didn't want to back a company that was full of lies. So as he meets his wife in college, they end up moving to Canada, building a cabin, living off the grid because they built the cabin with their hands, barely any tools. They ended up growing their own food and learning how to sustain. He said for a long time they only ate rice and beans most winters, and they were freezing because they didn't build their cabin right for the snow. So they end up growing their own food, and he ends up writing a book about it, right? So this book was published, and he was all excited. He calls his dad. He's like, Dad, I just published my book for the first time. I'm really excited. And his dad said, I'm not going to read it, and hung up the phone. So John Robbins sends his dad the book anyways. His dad never reads it. He's still upset, still ornery from his son being an outcast. And his dad ends up getting severe diabetes to where he's going to lose a leg, a foot, and go blind. Not much time to live. So he goes to his doctors and he's telling his doctors, I'll do anything. What do I need to do? And the doctor hands his dad a book, not knowing that his son was the author of the book. And it talked about all the lifestyle changes you need to eat based off the food that you eat. And so his dad didn't tell the doctor, this is my son. The dad, he just took the book, went home, and he actually read it. He read it, he embraced all the practices, and he read multiple books. So a year later, he calls his son, and he says, John, I have something exciting to tell you. John's like, okay, Dad, what's going on? And he's like, I gotta tell you. You were right. And John's like, I haven't really talked to my dad in 3 years. I have no idea what he's talking about. So he says, all right, Dad, that's awesome. I'm excited to hear what you have to say, but I don't understand what you're talking about. And he goes, your book, everything was right. I did everything, and I read this book and that book and this book, and I have gotten off my insulin. I've gotten off all my prescriptions. I'm healthy. I lost weight. Thank you. Everything has worked. They got off the phone, and John was just so happy. And so they met up for lunch, and they kind of started their relationship slowly. Well, as a few months go by, John finally meets up with his dad again and tells his dad, Dad, can I give you a hug? And his dad goes, well, why would you do that? And John says, well, it's just something I like to do to people I love, and I love you, so can I give you a hug? And his dad says, well, I guess. And so John gives him a hug, and his dad freezes up, locks his arms in, just like, ugh, the ick, I don't know what to do. And John lets go, and his dad kind of looks at him confused. And John says, Dad, can I hug you again? I want to do it again. And his dad says, I guess. And he hugs him again, and his dad kind of shivers, but not too much, and releases. And from then on, every time John seen his dad, he would give him a hug, and finally his dad started opening up and giving him a hug back. And so they would hug every single time they would see each other. And on his dad's deathbed, he lived for a long time. I think he was in his 90s. His dad was in a lot of pain. He had morphine, I think. So at that time, you could hit a button and it would give him some morphine every 15 minutes. And John was sitting with his dad. It was not looking good. And all his dad kept saying was, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. Well, John knew he wasn't going to go home. But John kept saying, Dad, you're going to go home soon. You will be home soon. What John was meaning was heaven, to the other side. And his dad's face would light up because he thinks he's going to go back to his estate, his home. And John was sitting there, and he's very connected, and he's like, I just started repeating a mantra because it was so hard to look at my dad in so much pain and hitting the button until that morphine would hit him, and then he would relax. And so he started repeating at his dad's bedside, Less pain, more love. Less pain, more love. Less pain, more love. And his dad was like, why? When he would come to, why do you keep saying more love? It's less pain. I need less pain. You always been about that love. That's just installed in you, isn't it? Just more love. And John just smiled and said, less pain, more love. So his dad kind of fell asleep. And John gave him a kiss on the forehead. And it woke his dad up and he was freaking out. Wow, what's going on? And John repeated, less pain, more love. And his dad kept saying, less pain. And eventually he said, more love. And so they repeated it back to each other. Less pain, more love. And finally, his dad relaxed deeply. And the last words he said to John was, wow, there is so much love here. And he passed on. And that story, that documentary hit me so hard because it's very similar to my father's journey. Now, my father has a background of heavy drugs. He used meth for a long time. He abused alcohol for a long time, and in and out of jail, incarceration for a very long time. From then, he divorced my mom and moved up to Wisconsin. That's where I moved up to with him. And he got clean. Still battled with alcohol, but he got clean off meth immediately. And my dad struggled. He went from owning a few homes here in Arizona to building a life the best he could, trying to raise us, me and my sister, the best he could, with my mom having her own addictions, to losing everything in a few years from using meth and having to move to get away from everything to try to rebuild. Literally had to restart his life. So my dad held a lot of anger, a lot of demons and anger from all the drug use and jail and like physical abuse and everything you can imagine. My dad held it inside him, just this. We used to call him this little evil leprechaun, right? Just holding all these negative emotions, and everything was everybody else's fault and nothing was his fault. And this went on for years. Everything was everybody else's fault. Nothing, he never ever took any responsibility for his actions. Never. And that was hard dealing with. And I understand my dad went from having a decent life to getting into drugs to divorcing to having to restart to trying to figure it out to trying to raise a teenager. Me, who I was a nutcase because I was all messed up from all the trauma I received as a child, watching the addictions, the fighting, the abuse. It was disgusting. It was terrible. So now I'm acting out like like probably any teenager would. I was very angry. I was fighting in school. I was an alcoholic. I got alcohol poisoning twice before I was 18 years old. I was expelled from high school at 17 from fighting. All right, so I was going through it. On top of that, I was in jail for catching my first felony. And a week later, I get out and my dad goes in for a DUI. So do you see this pattern of all kinds of trauma that we were both trying to deal with, trying to survive? No structure, no counseling, just honest proof of what drugs, alcohol, and abuse for many years can look like and cause. So fast forward a few years from then, my father moves back to Illinois, tries to restart. My father, like I said, held tons of demons, tons of anger, and just a very evil little leprechaun is how I can really explain it. And we say that because he's a short man, drinks whiskey, talks Irish, and all his demons come out. The power of music festivals and psychedelics helped me evolve from that anger. So I remember the first underground warehouse rave I ever went to was in Phoenix, Arizona. I was 16 years old. And it was when you had to go to a Radio Shack to get the tickets. And then from there was a number on the back and you called the number. They give you an address. But then after a certain time, you had to recall the number to give you the real address to detour the cops from busting down the rave. And I was 16. It was my first one. And I was just going around and hugging everybody because everybody was, and I was commenting on everybody's outfits. And I was just like, this is so cool. Everybody was dancing and vibing and everybody's smiling and having a good time. And I remember this little couple on the ground, this rave couple, asked me what my rave name was. And I'm like, rave name? I'm like, I don't know what that is. They're like, oh, you don't have one? I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you're a little love bug. I'm like, love bug? Okay, cool. So I ran with that. 31 years old. Still go by love bug. Still going around hugging everybody. Since then, it really opened me up to love in a way that I hadn't received as a child because there was so much trauma from my parents dealing with their own addictions. So then I start going 17, 18 to more festivals. I get introduced to MDA. That was the most heart-opening experience I ever was blessed with. And it really brought me down to my core of like, wow, I get to come to a music festival with good music, with smiling people, no judgment. Everybody's happy. We forget about all the crazy stuff that's going on. And I was introduced to PLUR. Peace, love, unity, respect. And I really embraced that culture. And I was always a dancer. I loved dancing. I loved vibing. I loved flowing. It was like my flow state to be in when I wasn't dealing with the trauma of my childhood. So fast forward, I started go-go dancing at 18 years old. So for those who don't know what go-go dancing is, it is the girls that get to dress up in the really cool costumes and go on stage with the DJs at music festivals or concerts, and they dance freestyle and perform for a certain amount of time each show and just free dance, free flow. So I was traveling back and forth from Wisconsin to Chicago, all over the cities, Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, Minneapolis, like all of them performing at shows. And in Chicago specifically, I got to invite whoever I wanted into the show for free. I was introduced to dubstep. I really enjoyed it, which is wild because my dad used to listen to heavy metal for a long time as a kid. And I still to this day cannot listen to any heavy metal or any like really heavy demonic music like that because it's so triggering to my childhood. Every time he was playing that music, it meant he was getting drunk, high, and my parents would fight. So I would usually, if I would come home from school and my dad was playing that music, I would just run away or go stay at a friend's house because I knew they were going to fight. So my dad at this time was still listening to heavy metal music and just being holding all this anger in him. And I finally said, Dad, like, you need to come to one of these shows. He's like, I'm not going to that. That's all for kids. I'm like, no, it's not. You need to come to one of these shows. It's dubstep. It's like heavy metal music. You're going to like it. So after a few beers, I convinced my dad to come with me to his first dubstep show. This was in Joliet, Illinois. I think it was called Mojo's. And we walk in, and everybody knows me, of course. And I say, hey, this is my dad. And everyone goes nuts. What? This is your dad? I'm like, yeah, this is my dad. And everybody hugs him. Hey, Dad, and just gives him a hug. And my dad's reaction was the same as John Robbins' dad. He shriveled up, why are they hugging me? Started laughing because he had no idea what to do. And went about to the bar because he was nervous, didn't know what the heck was going on, sat there and had some drinks. And people started coming up to him and talking and giving him hugs. And so fast forward, my dad's like, all right, these are kind of cool. So he started going with me to the shows. And every time he would go, more people would hug him. And my dad finally started opening up. Finally, it took him like a year and a half to hug people back, to be honest. He was very closed off. He started smiling more. He started listening to different style music, not low vibrational demonic heavy metal. He started to open up, right? The power of hugs and human connection. I watched my father go from a deep, dark, evil depression to slowly over the years open up, all because my friends and random people at these raves started hugging my father. Because that's what people do at raves. We just hug each other. It's all about love. It's all about peace, love, unity, and respect. Doesn't matter your age. Doesn't matter who you are. There's no judgment. Everybody's there for that reason. Peace, love, unity, respect. Dance, have a good time. As my dad started opening up over the years, even his racism remarks started to go away. He went from N-word to this, to that, to now hugging all colors, sizes, women, men, everything. It was one of the most beautiful things to witness. Him coming out from the darkest, deepest, evilest place to slowly opening up. His heart space was opening up. Our first year at Electric Forest, 2014, was our first festival together. And I believe I was 20 years old at that point. I believe I was 19 or 20. Anyways, our first Electric Forest together was 2014. And this is where the psychedelics come in. Before this, I tried psilocybin mushrooms for the first time, probably like that same year. And it was a beautiful experience. So at Electric Forest, our first year, 2014, my dad introduced me to LSD. And we dropped LSD together our first year at Electric Forest, and we all walked into this beautiful, magical forest together. It was the most magical experience I ever experienced. Still to this day, nothing compares to the first time I ever did LSD. So since Electric Forest 2014, 10 years and growing, my father and I have been healing through music. We even threw our own music festival during COVID 2 years in a row. My dad built the stage, had all his sound equipment. I set up a workshop, a meditation. I got all the DJs. We set up camping in the front, DJs in the back with the stage. We had all our wonderful DJ friends come and do this for free. 2 years in a row. It was beautiful. During this time in music festivals, I joined a harm reduction nonprofit organization. And I did that for 4 years, teaching people about psychedelics and drugs and being EMT certified, learning how to help people, what to look out for, make sure everybody is safe, learning to be of service in the community of love. And since then, my father and I are still, to this day, going to music festivals, and we will continue. So on. So a few years after Electric Forest, we were at a music festival called Summer Camp Music Festivals in Illinois. And this was the first festival that my father and I went to, just him and I. So before we would have like a few friends, with us camping at our camp. But this time it was just my father and I. And it was such a beautiful experience. I was volunteering for a harm reduction nonprofit organization there. So I would volunteer my time and I would be at the booth where people come to us if they're having a bad trip or if they need their drugs tested or if they need some water. We have flyers. We have like ear protectors. Like we have everything there. It was a very beautiful nonprofit. On top of that, my cousins, McDevitt Taco Supply, Super Heady Tacos, they had a vendor there. So they were slinging tacos. It was just a really cool festival to be at all together. My cousins were building their business with Super Heady Tacos. I was in the harm reduction side and connecting with my father. And we're all here for good times, good music, and a beautiful experience. Well, it was one of the nights, and my father and I decided to try MDMA and mushrooms together. I believe that's called hippie flipping. Hippie flipping. And oh my gosh, it was like the most magical experience. I remember twirling around saying like, this is the best feeling ever. It was wild. But we were walking from camp to a stage later that night, hours later. We had a group of our friends with us. And I was explaining how that day when I was volunteering, a situation happened and I was there and I helped a couple people who were having like heat strokes. And I actually helped them and everybody was happy and thankful and all the things. And I was just explaining how the harm reduction program was really cool and I had to go through 6 months of training before I could even volunteer. So it was a really cool experience to be a part of. And for the first time ever, and I do believe it was because of the medicine, the plant medicine, the MDMA and the mushrooms, my dad, as we were walking, grabbed me, pulled me in close to him, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "I'm so proud of you." And I know that might not seem like much, but that was the first time my dad ever kissed me on the forehead. My dad we were not a very hugging, kiss on the forehead or cheek family. We weren't very, like the words, the nurturing words of love weren't there either. I'm proud of you. That was barely said. So in that moment, I just held back the tears because it was a huge breakthrough. Now, I'm not saying go out and do drugs, go out and do psychedelics with your parents, or you need to do them. This is just my journey, our experience, and how psychedelics, music, helped my father and I come together. Helped him come out of a deep, dark depression, helped me come out of a deep, dark depression of trauma. being in your heart space, living through the heart is what the 5D frequency is. When you hear people say fifth dimension frequency, high vibrational frequencies, it comes from the heart. Human connection, heart-to-heart connection will literally heal everything. It will heal your darkest, deepest wounds. You must stay connected with human heart-to-heart interaction. So this is a true story of my father's and mine's relationship, and how we were both messed up as children, how we both were alcoholics, how we both were in and out of jail, and how we overcame it through music, psychedelics, and love. It's a message to those healing parent wounds. The deepest way to heal from all that trauma is forgiveness. Trust me, I went through tons of retreats, of facing my father when I was a child, of everything to be able to be at where I am now. And when I say retreats, also in my psychedelic journeys, it opens you up and it surfaces all that trauma up. It makes you face it. And I am so thankful and blessed that I did it, because me being able to forgive my father, forgive myself, forgive the situations, and instead embrace the spirituality, embrace the love, and embrace the experience that I do get to have with my father is the best decisions I've ever made. Embracing the friendship I have with my father now over what a father should or supposed to be like, because I know tons of people that say, oh my God, I can never do drugs with my kid. I can never do psychedelics with my kid. I can never party with my kid. I can never... Guess what? You don't open up to your kid either. My dad is my best friend. My dad knows everything. I'm open to my dad about everything. And to me, I personally would rather have that type of relationship with my father than the society parent-kid relationship. This is just my father's and mine's story and how we overcame childhood trauma, addiction, incarceration, to having psychedelic breakthroughs and the most beautiful connection and friendship I could ever imagine with my parents. So I usually end on an affirmation, but for this episode, we're going to end on less pain, more love. And with that being said, have a beautiful day.